Estamos aquí con Robb Flynn de Machine Head, que está de regreso en México después de varios años. Well, Robb, how are you?
I'm doing good, man.
Well, it took 8 years for you to return to Mexico. How do you feel to be here back?
I'm stoked. I mean, my wife and I used to come to Mexico on vacation all the time, even before Machine Head had even toured here. So I went to Cozumel, I went to Zihuatanejo, I went to Cancun and Cabo, and it was always insane. Like we always just had the craziest time, and it was super fun. And so when we finally get to play here, every time we get to play here, like I always have those memories going through my head that it's a good time.
Good. And now you have this new album. You're here with this new album called of Kingdom and Crown. Conceptual work seen from two sides, with two main characters linked by a tragedy. How did you come this idea come for you?
I had tried to write a concept album a couple of times, and it just didn't really come together. Like, so I just ended up just making it like a regular album, where it was, just a collection of songs. And with this one, I just really wanted to give it a shot again. I felt like I wanted to have a different voice. I felt like I wanted to sing from a different perspective, not just my perspective. And, so it kind of just all came together. And I think when the song Slaughter the Martyr, which is the opening track, when the lyrics to that were finished, that's when I kind of knew, because it was this really big epic track. It was 10 minutes long, and I didn't know where it was going for a few months. And once that fell into place, I was like, oh, I know exactly where this can go.
How complicated it's to make a concept album, because it's not the same to make a regular album where songs have no necessary relationship between all of them, but you have to make a complete story where songs are linked and have to make sense. How complicated it is to make this?
I mean, in some ways for me, it was easier because, I've written 9 albums from my point of view, like basically my view of society, my struggles, my demons, whatever. And, this time around, it was like writing from a totally different, from 2 different people's perspectives and 2 different people that are on the opposite ends of the spectrum. And so in that way, it was awesome because I got to kind of explore a bunch of characters. It's a story about love and murder and revenge. And so just being able to kind of go into, that in like gory detail was also great because, part of it is it's just a story. And it can be about anything. I think the challenge was just to make it so that I felt connected to it. First couple of drafts of the lyrics, like I just couldn't, I didn't get it. Like I couldn't connect to it. I didn't feel anything. I just felt like I was reading words off of a page, and it was it was good lyrics. It was a good story, but I needed to connect with both characters and be able to draw my own emotion from that.
These characters are not villain, are not heroes. They're not black and white. They're humans, as you said before. All these help you to connect to them in a personal way.
Not. I mean, like I said, I wrote the story, and the challenge for me was trying to find where I connected to it. So that was probably the biggest challenge.
You are now an anime fan, right?
Mm-hmm.
You say Attack on Titan. Do you have any anime that you want to recommend to your fans apart from Attack on Titan?
There was one called Death Note that was cool. Attack on Titan. I mean, I got into anime when I was a teenager. Like I was a total anime Star Wars nerd, and I was into Akira and Space Cruiser Yamato and Robotech and a lot of stuff like that. And then I kind of got out of it. I didn't, for no reason in particular. And then over the pandemic, my kids got into anime, and I got 2 teenage boys, and I sat down and I started watching it with them, and I was like, oh my, I was like, this is fucking brutal. I was like, this is awesome. Like, let's watch this together. I'll totally watch this. You know, we were all locked down anyway, so I was like, let's do it. And we started watching it, and you know, it was just, you know, the way that they tell a story, the way that it's, you know, that show in particular was just so weird and psychedelic and brutally violent, and you know, just, you know, people's heads getting split in half, and you know, like it was awesome. So you know, kind of just went down that route, and I think that there's, you know, there's always going to be a part of me that is attracted to that. You know, when I was younger, I was very much into Japanese, just everything Japanese movies, Japanese cartoons, Japanese anime, like all that kind of stuff. So part of me that's always going to be attracted to that, I guess.
Well, thank you. And Machine Head released one album before the pandemic, Catharsis, and then you released this new album after the pandemic. Has this pandemic had an impact in the band and in you as a person, as a musician, in the way you write, in the way you compose?
Well, I mean, it definitely gave me a lot of time to write. You know? I mean, I wrote 19 songs and put them out, you know, between, you know, the beginning of the pandemic and you know, now. And so, you know, I mean, in some ways, you know, the pandemic was great for me. You know, like I've been on tour. You know, I started out in Forbidden. Then I went to Violence. Then I went right to Machine Head, and Machine Head has been going nonstop for 30 years. You know, like I've never had a break. I've never gone on hiatus. You know, there's never been a 5-year break between albums. Like we have just toured album since I was, you know, like 18 years old. And the pandemic was the first real like break that I've ever had in my life. And it was awesome. You know, I got to reconnect with my wife, got to reconnect with my kid, and I taught my son how to drive. Then I taught my youngest son how to drive. You know, little moments that I probably would have missed because I was on tour. And so, you know, in that sense, it was pretty enjoyable for me. And from a writing sense, like, you know, I think just sometimes tuning out the outside world. You know, a lot of times when I go to write a record, like I don't listen to music, I don't go to shows, I don't do much. Like I just kind of try and focus on music. And so I think the isolation of the pandemic, you know, and I mean, honestly, nothing really changed for me. Like I would go down to my studio and jam. Like, you know, like I got a studio in Oakland and I would just drive there and play guitar and sing and work on ideas. And that's what I was doing before the pandemic hit too. So.
Talking about famous people, this is a personal one. A lot of people think that musicians are rich and have a lot of fame and have a lot of women and, you know, this rock star sense that was maybe 30 or 40 years ago. But what means to be a rock star now for you?
I mean, it's certainly different, you know, when I was, you know, I mean, I started touring when I was 19 years old. I mean, it was a totally different world and, you know, like it was all the things that you would imagine it would be, you know, like I was, you know, and it was at the 80s and 90s, you know, it was the 90s and stuff. So it was like crazy groupies and drugs and partying all the time. And, you know, and then I think you slow down and, you know, I've been with my wife for 32 years. Yeah, and so, you know, to me, it's about music, you know, and that's what it always was about. You know, it was always about music. But, you know, it's about music. It's about putting on the best show. You know, we still party, you know, like I still drink beer on stage every night. And, you know, the rest of the guys, you know, my bass player, Jared, he fucking rages. Like he rages like every night. And, you know, I just don't think it's going to be, you know, to me, I think that, you know, just speaking for myself, you know, I'm not speaking for anybody else in a band. I'm just speaking for myself. You know, to me, it's really about just like putting on a great show, you know, and making a connection with the audience every night. You know what I mean? Like just trying to find that thing that makes everybody go crazy or makes everybody like cry or makes everybody like just fucking rage or whatever it is. Because so much of, you know, to me, I think music is about, you know, it's a giant release in a lot of way. You know, it's a release of happiness. You know, it's a release of anger. It's a release of sadness. You know, it's a release of joy. And that to me is like, when all of that happens, that's like the fucking best shit ever. You know what I mean? Like that's the highest point of my fucking day every day when I'm on tour.